first I will introduce. So I'm glad to introduce Rukmini Banerji. You all know Pratham. Whoever works in the field of education or language knows Pratham, in my opinion, because I have gone to various places in the corners of India, like Dantewada, Bijapur, Sukma, or Nagaland also. Wherever I have gone, I heard about Pratham in the villages as well. So that is the... So Rukmini Banerji is CEO of Pratham Education Foundation. She is an economist trained at St. Stephen's College, Delhi School of Economics, Oxford, and University of Chicago as well. She has led large-scale education programs and ASER, ASER report on education. So she has led that for many years. She is a recipient of Idan Prize, Bihar's Shiksha Puraskar. She basically writes very effectively on education and children's stories as well. So the last keynote is on the theme is way forward, how to build this as a meaningful engagement. So we are to the last keynote, and I request Rukmini to take over. You can sit also.
I'll stand. Okay. So thank you very much to Subodh and to Tanveer also. My sister lives in Hyderabad. So in the morning when I was leaving, she had checked out this Bahu Bhasa. And she told me that on no count are you eligible to go and talk over there. So better you stay at home, okay? So I'm taking guidance from what Tanveer said is that, or I think Subodh, one of you said, is that the organizers know why they have brought us all together. So if what I say has no consequence, blame them. And if you think there is something in what I said, then you can give all the credit to me. Okay. Yes. So as he introduced, as Pratham, largely Pratham, Prathamik, Purva Prathamik, we are largely experiences with children. Now increasingly also a little bit with youth. And so with children, with families, and with communities, and with schools. And when I was thinking, I was not here last 2 days, although my two colleagues, Shraddha and Shravana, who are here, were giving me a good orientation every day. I thought today's day is about people. And so at least from that perspective, let me see whether there are things that, I don't know about way forward, but I can certainly see lots of links, because you're a very diverse crowd coming from many different types of backgrounds. And for us who are directly working only with children and education, we often don't get a chance to speak to such a very different audience. So I really, when I was invited, I was quite excited about coming. So what I thought I would do is just 3-4 parts of what I'll say. Whether there are links or not, I will leave it to you to decide. First was that I think a lot of what we have learned from the kids. So how does one listen and learn is one. Second is that in the last at least decade, some experiments with children and technology we have been involved in. And so what have we learned from some of those? And maybe a little bit about how we see the world, going forward. My own, I think one of the morning panels, the speaker who works in Nandurbar but is from Bihar, is he here? Yes. So I'm just like you. I speak, my actually originally family is from Bihar. My name is Bengali. I don't really speak Bengali very well. So I speak many languages quite badly. And that, I feel embarrassed about it until you're with children. There I find that there's quite an advantage. I discovered that as I worked with children. Pratham's work started in Bombay. It was called Bombay at that time. And I remember going into schools, this is 30 years ago, and the children said, "Tumhi itke motte zare tani tumhala kahits mahiti nahi. You're so big and you don't know anything." So it really brought our two, what shall I say? We somehow became more equal than if I was teacher and they were children. So now I've decided that knowing languages badly is not a bad thing. It gets you entry into lots of places. The only place I hesitate to speak is in West Bengal, because my Bengali is really not good, and the name Banerji is not a good thing because they'll say you are expected. But if you speak bad Marathi and your name is Banerji, people just love you, so that's fine. Okay. So in this whole business about working with children, and a lot of what we've been doing is, how do you get children to acquire reading skills? Now, reading skills in which language and how, that's a whole big, I think, landscape on which to think. But I was thinking from yesterday that specific moments in which I feel things that we have learned. I remember one of the things we do is we have very simple paragraphs that children begin to read. And I remember being in a village in Nalanda district, and it was a small paragraph that the kids were reading about, I don't remember the exact paragraph, but it was something about talab mein machli hai, talab mein, bacche tair rahe hain, something like this. And every time the word talab came, the kids looked a little bit blank. So eventually I asked, ki, kya hai isme? So they said, galat word hai wo, usme aap pokhar bolo. Similarly, I remember a story which had vegetables in it. There's a story, it's a Pratham Books story called Alu Malu Kalu, in which there is a lot of vegetables that are being grown, and then there is a boy and a dog and so on. So usme ek baigan hai. And again, depending on where you are, and if you watch the kids, you see the reactions, and then basically the baigan should be called bhanta and not baigan. And as soon as you bring in that word, it all becomes much more smooth. So as the wiki crowd was talking, I was thinking if you can have wiki children come in and clean up our texts to make it more suitable for themselves, I think lots of more children would read faster, because they can tell you what exactly works for them. If I take it a little bit ahead, when we do the big Asar survey, it's a very, very simple test of reading. And we are often told that ye to bahut simplistic hai. It's very reductionist and simple. Just because a child can decode doesn't mean that they comprehend. But I've seen so many examples if you watch the children carefully. For example, there was a little paragraph I remember, ki ghar ke samne nala hai, was the sentence. And child after child in Bombay slums, reading through it, would call it gutter. So it's not only that you're reading it and you're replacing it with the appropriate word that the adults had not put in. So I think this is quite an advanced level of sort of reading and meaning making that kids do. A slightly less happy one is, again, I remember this from Delhi. This paragraph went like this. Sham ko papa ghar aate hain. Haath dho ke khana khate hain. Maa se baatein karte hain. Aur phir so jate hain. You can see the text. The words are all very simple, straightforward. There is no complicated spelling. There's no very complicated thought. But child after child on the third sentence would slow down. And eventually after the fourth or fifth child, I said, what is the matter? And they said, Papa, Mummy se baatein nahi karte hain. Now, what do you do with cases like this? Should you write paragraphs which are reality? Should you write paragraphs which are fantasy? Or should you ask children ki tum hi likh do usko, ki tumhe jo theek lagta hai? So I think that we feel that working with children and texts, listening carefully, and kind of trying to understand where they are coming from, certainly has improved. I won't say everything we write or we give the children today is fantastic, but I think that these iterations and modifications certainly help. And I was thinking again in the morning that if there was a way in which the kids could go in and put their own words inside the sentence, that would be such an empowering thing for kids to do. So I don't know who has wiki children, but I think wiki children with wiki text would be a lovely way for kids to make things easier for themselves, which they do actually when they begin to read. If I move a step ahead, and I think on the first day or second day you talked a lot about whose story and who gets to tell it. And I thought that would be one example from our side. We were working in this Sultanpur, Amethi, Raebareli area in UP. And, of course, the texts that were being written and discussed were Hindi, because that's what the language in school was. And one of my colleagues felt that the children, what they speak, jaise wo bolte hain, we should write that down. And so, little stories were written exactly, I don't know if it's Avdhi or Khadiboli, whatever the language there was. So the kids would read it, but they would start laughing and thoda sa patronizingly tell us, कि ऐसे लिखा नहीं जाता है. This is not how things are written. Things are written like how it's written in the textbook. These things are only said. And I've always wondered, what do you do with norms that the children have formed so early in life to say that they have an idea of what is, and really after some time, we stopped writing it in their I don't know, there are a lot of language people here, whether I should say dialect or language, but we did not write in the way that people were speaking, because the kids continuously corrected us and said, वैसे नहीं लिखा जाता है, ऐसे लिखा जाता है जैसे book में लिखा गया है. Moving to another story that came to my mind, as I said, I'm not a very good Bengali, I'm from Patna. And so I always hesitate on anything Bengali. We have a lot of our team members work in different parts of West Bengal. And everybody, because if you're working with children, you start writing after some time. So I had a whole collection of these stories, and I gave it to my aunt, my Masi, who was a fairly well-recognized, even children's writer in Bengali. And it was COVID time, everybody was at home, and I felt that she, instead of watching Korean drama, she could help me with some of my work. And so the first day I gave her, she looked through the pages and she called me and she said, "Ye kya bakwas hai? Your people are teaching children, khud hi illiterate hai ye log. Grammar mein galti hai, what is this?" So I said, look, this is who they are. They work with kids. And, we've all come out of the education system that has produced us. So that is why I'm asking you, please improve it, please, straighten it out. 3 days later, she called me and said, actually, I've changed my mind. What you sent me is quite unique. So I was a bit pleased because she was always unhappy with me. So I said, why are you saying that now? And I don't know, I think there are much better Bengalis than me in the audience. She said, Gram Banglar ekta abhash asche. According to her, and I don't know enough nuances of current Bengali children's writing, she said a lot of it is done very Calcutta-centric. And this, which is coming from Kuch Bihar, Jalpaiguri, Malda, wherever it was coming from, may not be very sophisticated, but it's giving a flavor of whatever the reality of the kids are. Now, in her case, we found somebody who was willing to go that distance, to take a step back, to say that it may not have fit whatever the norms of writing was, but really the flavor is important because that's how the people who are working with the children in turn interacting with their instructors are probably in a better place because they're all talking in a similar kind of way. Even in our Amethi example, we had a very large-scale volunteer reading program going on with village children. And after some time, like we normally do, we said to people who were working with the children that once children learn to read, then it's like a rakshas, it's a demon, because they need more and more things to read. And it's very difficult, even if you have libraries, to have enough to feed everybody. So the only option is that you have to start writing and give them something every day. So at the first time, many of our volunteers who were just like ordinary people said, "Pehle to humne nahi socha tha ki hum padha sakte the, but you made us teachers. We didn't think we could do this, but now you've made us teachers." And after sitting down and actually writing, and what we would say is, don't write for me, write for the kids. If you write and you read it out to them or they read and they like it, that's all that matters. And we have to, as a country of 250 million children, produce enormous amounts of things so that if they learn to read, which I hope every child will, they can keep on going ahead. And I remember an elderly gentleman who was a volunteer, he came to me one day with almost tears in his eyes saying, "Pehle to aapne shikshak banaya, aur ab main lekhak bhi ban gaya, but mere ghar mein log kehte hain, tum to aise nahi the, tum kaise badal gaye?" So I think that some of these things I feel are very, very, we make barriers about who is same. In the same time, I remember we were working with the UP government all across the state for standard 1 and 2. And an extension of what I'm telling you is we would say to teachers, कि आप भी लोगों के लिए लिखो. I was traveling back from Allahabad to Lucknow one evening, And so I called some of my colleagues in the way and I said, ki, aaj ke workshop mein, training today, did you guys do any writing? So they said, yeah, all our teachers have written. So I said, can you give me some samples? I'll be passing through, I can pick it up. I remember one of my colleagues, and she was a very thin, very, what shall I say, slim girl. She said, aapko 5 kilo chahiye ki 10 kilo kahani chahiye? Because literally, teachers had written stories which in polythene bags, it was full. We brought one bag, I don't know how many kilos it was, and I remember sitting with a few other of my team members all night in Lucknow, reading them. The stories may not have been fantastic or innovative, but you could see on the piece of paper the care that had been taken. In those days, we didn't have felt pens. It was, ballpoint pens. But usme be red, blue, little flowers, little illustrations. And I remember at a meeting in NCRT saying that if, again, the same thing, a lot of our children don't know how to read, but they are learning. A lot of our teachers feel they have to wait for curriculum, but they're getting out of that and writing. How can you help in this whole business to really, the conversation I think was about quality of children's literature. And my question was, what is quality exactly? Is quality that somebody will set a norm and a standard and say, this is quality, and I have to only use this series of books? Or is it a teacher who really wants to write for her children, who needs to be encouraged, and maybe there is, of course, everybody can improve. And at that point, I was very disappointed that nobody in that very august audience said, this is the beginnings of quality, this is the beginnings of how everybody can participate. If you have a big enterprise in the country where everybody will read and enjoy reading, then we have to have everybody writing as well. And so it was left to saying, ठीक है, आप लोग करो, कार्यकर्ता type लोग हो, आप लोग वो करो. We will come up with the standards of, what is. And I think in today's day, I'm talking about 15 years ago, I think much more is possible on this front. And especially from the morning I've been listening, that I think this open source, Story Weaver, many of you are familiar with Pratham Books has, the ability to be able to place something, other people can use it, they can improve it, they can dilute it. I myself have some stories on Story Weaver, and while in principle I really like this open source idea, when somebody really makes a khichdi out of my story, I feel quite upset. But that's okay, you can be upset and be at home. Your stuff is out there, right? Yours and everybody else's. And they let you know, or there is, I think, some automatic way of letting you know when a story has been translated into some other language. I mean, I don't even know what these languages are, and the stories are getting translated in those languages. So I think today a lot is possible to take these type of small, I would say, field-based learnings into somewhere else, which can be much wider and deeper and much more, bringing in of all kinds of people. Again, from the morning I was thinking that there are other people who should have been in the room other than me. We have a team which works in Kokrajhar and Bongaigaon. And I'm sure many of you who know languages know that's a very rich language area where sometimes one school will have children from many languages there. And language there is not just a language, I think it's also very integrated into the landscape there and all kinds of politics and violence and many other things. So how do you approach this kind of an area? And our team that was working there over a period of time started doing a language mapping, which I feel probably in many more areas we should do. So what they would say is, what is the language the teacher can speak? That's an obvious one. What's the language that the teacher was taught in? What's the language that parents speak? And what's the language of instruction if the parents went to school, what language did they go in? Very important, we mapped what language do children use when they play in the playground. Because playground language is sometimes not the same as classroom language and may not be the same as home language. When NEP first came out, the first reaction of everyone was this on the language issue. And I remember being asked, what is your view on language? And my reaction was, let's ask the children first, what language do they play in? What language are they friends in? And start from there upwards. Even mother tongue and home language instruction gives it a certain, I think, boundary. Whereas if children really want to be friends with someone, they will figure out how to communicate. Some of it may be language, some of it may be non-language. But I think we should start from there and then build up to whichever direction we want to go. And here in this case, in some of the schools there, schools and villages there, we have obviously this is not a one-day job, it's over a whole period of time. And I'm sure these methods, I'm sure, sir, in Koya you must be using this, that they have, if you have languages, you have, Bodo, you have Rajbangshi, you have Nepali, you have Santali, you have Rabha, not all the languages in the same school, but I've seen schools with 3 languages there. And sometimes the habitation patterns of these kids is also quite distinct and different. And there what they have evolved over a period of time is to say, let's take a common story, which is known in the area. And the story is told to the children in their own language first. Then everybody gets together to make storyboards or puppets. So there's a big, doing things together because you know what the story is. So all the, background stuff that you're going to create. And literally they have storyboards, they have pictures that they make. And then you enact it. So everybody can participate because you know the story. You may not know the language, but you know the story. And so you come together on the performance, on the music, on the art, and on the getting ready. Only thing you're not right in the beginning in sync with is the language that you don't understand. But over a period of time, the intention is to move them into Assamese, which is the mainstream language of instruction in most of the schools as you go up. But I think along the way, the kids learn a lot of each other's language as well. And certainly they learn vocabulary enough to be able to communicate better. Now, this is something that I saw happening in a very, I won't say organic way, but it was not an unnatural way of moving forward. Last year, I was in Bangalore, heart of Bangalore. And we were working with the Bangalore Municipal Corporation. And it was surprising how poor the reading levels were in Bangalore city. And these are government schools, so they were Kannada medium schools. I went to one of the big schools. I was trying to remember the area, which I can't, but it was a relatively big school. And in 6th, 7th, and 8th, there were 65 children. When we actually sat with the children and asked, there was only 5 children who spoke Kannada at home. And the rest, it was not one language. They spoke, somebody had come from Rajasthan, somebody had come from Bihar, somebody had come from Vijayawada, somebody had come from Tamil Nadu. Now, sitting in the heart of Bangalore with resources of every type. In the morning, we were talking about low resources. This is high resources and low visibility, that in the heart of Bangalore, nobody is helping this teacher. She's being given training in Kannada, and she's being held up for saying why your children can't read. But nobody has helped her to figure out what should she do in this situation. And by the time you come to 6th, 7th, 8th, it's not just you have to learn to read. I mean, there is maths, there's science, there's all kinds of other things. And so I feel like we have all these which are just under our nose. Kokrajhar, Bongaigaon may be very far away. But I think that these mixed languages that we have, and in today's day and age, how can we help both families and teachers to really be able to... Bombay, for example, even today runs schools in 8 languages of instruction. And I don't know how many other big cities in the world do that. But I think it was a necessity, even 40 years ago, 50 years ago in Bombay, to have schools which catered to the distribution of the population that we had. And perhaps that's the kind of thing in our more modernizing cities. We need to think of who is in our schools. It is very common for the Punjab board, 10th board, to be topped by Biharis, and often girls. So we have a very fluid population, and I think that the institutional arrangements that we have are perhaps much more sluggish in dealing with and I think this is richness, but it's a richness that we are not tapping. It's like mining, that you have lots of minerals in the ground, but somehow when the mining business begins, it seems to become an extractive. So how do we help our families and our schools and our children with bringing out this very richness that we have in language? And how can that be something that can feed into new ways of teaching and learning, or just even reading and enjoying, that can be done? And sitting here from the morning, I feel like there's a lot of hope in what you were saying. Some of it was very technical, but I think the intent is exactly this. How do you bring more and more, opportunity across the board to all kinds of different people who need it? If I move on now to some of our experiments with technology, I feel I should talk something about technology since, I'm in triple IIT or something, right? So a couple of years before COVID, Madhav Chavan, who's one of the founders of Pratham, is of a believer that this traditional education is linear because there was no other choice. Linear in the sense you have to be in class 1, then class 2, then class 3, then class 4. In the class, you have to do chapter 1, and then chapter 2, and then chapter... These are just because there was no other way to do it, perhaps. And somehow in this modern school system, this is the way it operates. But is there a reason that things should be linear? If you want to test out learning to be non-linear, doing it in today's private schools or government schools is tough, especially in middle school, where the pressure of curriculum and exam mounts, and time is very constrained and tight. So we decided, but outside the school is a very free space. There's lots of time and there's lots of space, and really there it can be steered by what the kids want. Much more than in school, everybody has to do what the adults want. But outside the school, there's a possibility that you can do what the kids want. We were given a large number of tablets at that time. So the idea was that if we hand over, and I think influences of hole in the wall and other such experiments were also, I think, playing in our mind. So what we did is in about 1,000 villages, some in Rajasthan, some in Maharashtra, and some in UP, children's groups were formed, mohalla-wise groups. Basically, they're the friends groups who hang out together anyway. And these tablets were given to them, and they had digital content on them. We also felt, kuch cheeze honi chahiye, like English. English kisi ko nahi aati hai, some content on English should be put there. And we thought we were being very innovative by putting English content where the English was spoken by kids like them. So it wasn't some British Council English, no disrespect to British Council, but just normal English. So the English would be what children in Marathwada would speak if they, so on and so forth. And like that, we put in quite a lot of digital content. But as we watched these kids, and there was no instruction, you were given content, you were in a group, and you had a device. And the idea was to see what do you do. Because our children also don't have, within the education system, they don't have much choice. But outside you have choice. You can decide कि मैं cricket खेलना है कि hockey खेलना है, मेरे team में कौन होगा. You have lots of choice. It's not like children are not exercising choice. So what would they do in these? And I think we learned some very important lessons from them. First was, in these 1,000 villages, probably 5,000 tablets were given out. And there were not enough tablets, so 2 groups had to share. Over a period of 2 years, there was hardly any loss. There was some damage, sometimes out of, trying to take care of it too well. Sometimes you had electricity surge and things like that. Natural, I would say. I forget who were the tab guys? Lenovo. Who was the tab people? They compared this damage and loss with let's say, a comparison group which would have been individual owners in urban areas. And this rural public use tablets had less damage and loss or theft to bilkul hi nahi. People would often say to us कि आपने बच्चों के हाथ में ऐसे दे दिया, what happens? And I've seen, for example, in UP villages, you go in the house, there is, various Bhagwan ke photos, and tab is also kept there, and सुबह उठ के ना टीका सबको लग जाता है, and tab को भी लग जाता है. अब आप टीका लगा रहे हो tab को, it's very unlikely anybody is going to steal it. Okay, you're treating it like such an important part of your. So one was there was no loss, hardly any loss, very little damage. Second was that we also, in our great wisdom, we had put some passwords and all so that they can, 50% were broken by rural kids who had probably not a particularly good education, but there's no lack with anybody's buddhi. Not only did they break the passcodes, but they put codes that you could not crack. Okay? So then we said, Jane do yaar, don't need any passcode, anything, Open source. Truly believe in openness. Okay? Don't try to protect anybody from anybody. Third thing was, we noticed, which we had not thought about before, is all the tabs had cameras. And when you went, and this has happened to me several times, I would say to a group, show me your most favorite video. And they'll show you a video, but it's not a video that we put in there. So, ये कौन सा video है? So you look at a video, like especially English conversational videos. And then you start looking, and the kids who have the tab, They've put up a very nice bed cover at the back, put on some nice clothes. They've practiced looking at the video, but actually their video is much better than the video we put in, because for each individual video, probably the kids took a lot more care than we were doing some slightly mass production of videos. So then we realized that hum to ulta chal rahe. We are going the wrong way. Rather than us giving things to them, they should be giving things to us. And that set forth a whole new way where we would say that rather than giving you digital content, let me give you editing skills. Thoda sa editing skills. Thoda sa usme music kaise lagana hai. Actually in India, I don't need to teach anybody that. Everybody knows. From age, they are born knowing how to make reels. And this is, I'm talking pre-COVID. But even at that time, and we would then put out saying that, say, in the summer holidays, there was a competition saying, you have some 3 choices. One is mango. Mango ke upar film bana. It has to be only 3 minutes or something. Or on water. There were some topics given. The number of videos that these kids made, it was impossible for the Pratham team to look at them. So village by village, we had to set up juries who would screen the films. And then, and the juries, I was in a village in Rajasthan, I remember. The jury was 3 mothers. One was actually the sarpanch and there were 2 other women. And they had their ghungat like this. And I said at one point, ki aap log bahut strict ho. This was a good one. And she lifted up her ghungat and said, nahi, bilkul inka jo sequence tha, wo theek nahi tha. So from that, jury would come out suggested. So these all experiences were that there was so much to be done. We had an idea that kids could do a lot on their own. But I think we completely underestimated that given the opportunity, given some assistance, like this video editing rather than giving them digital content, looking for choice rather than saying, yehi karna hai, what would come about. Then came COVID. And I think for everybody in every walk of life, COVID was a real watershed because you had to change the operating styles with which you worked. For us, we were used to meeting kids every day. So for example, most of our big programs at that time, we had a direct relationship in almost 10,000 villages. But nobody kept phone numbers and all of that because you were in the villages all the time and you met people face to face. So when the lockdown suddenly happened, just like with all our families where you wanted to find out that your Masi and your Bua and everybody was okay, our people wanted to find out that the kids that we were with are okay. So from March 20th till April 10th, I remember, everybody pushed with whichever phone number you had. And by the time it was almost April 20th, we had managed to get one phone number in every mohalla in every village because you had to go mohalla by mohalla. You could not go village by village because it was not clear how much the ana-jana was possible. And then we started something which we called Thodi Masti, Thodi Padhai, which was to say that at that time, Padhai was not foremost on people's mind. You were worried, you were fearful, there was a lot of concern about livelihood, there was all sorts of things happening. So what can we do to send something little that the family could do with their children? And first we started with smartphones and we realized that that does not reach everyone because even those who had smartphones, recharging them was becoming difficult. And so we moved to SMS. So I think in this conference you've talked at some point that everything does not need to be cutting edge. And at that point I think SMS saved us in a way that nothing else could have. So at the peak of the lockdown, we were sending out 300,000 messages a day to kids, and 300,000 families ke saath to shayad nahi hua hoga, but to a very large number, we would try to call at least once every 2 weeks. The calling established back the human relationship. We also made sure that the message went from us to the family, that the us was somebody that they knew. It was not a mass mailing or, however you can send bulk SMS. There was a lot of discussion about that. And because these were all individual, you had to keep within the number of free SMSs you can send. The calling the families established many things. In many ways, even though we met these kids and families every day, this individual calling made an impact that when you meet kids in a group, it didn't. And we got so much feedback back. So in that SMS, which is what, 162 characters or whatever it is, how much can you pack in to keep a kid busy for how long? And how much can you pack in because that thing has to be read to or discussed between an adult and a kid, right? So we learned, for example, that if I send a message which says, think of a triangle, what are different types of triangles and what are they called? Parents would say, जब वो message आया, हमने बच्चों को बोला कि textbook पे देख लो, go look in the textbook. This is a school type question. When you got a message like, how many buckets of water did you use today for washing or cleaning? There was lots of discussion. We got calls back saying, आज पानी नहीं आया है, आप आज क्यों पूछे? Can we tell you about yesterday? Bucket क्यों पूछ रहे हैं? Drum क्यों नहीं पूछ रहे? Jug क्यों नहीं पूछ रहे? Mug क्यों नहीं पूछ रहे? So you could see that what kinds of activities led to what kinds of reactions. So I would say that a big push in COVID was to really understand what would work when it was not an age, grade, curriculum related input to the children, but was something which said, can even for 15 minutes a day, the family get together and solve this. And I don't see why learning should not be like that. And it was possible because of SMS. Later on, when it was more possible to move around, we did a bit of an evaluation of about 1,000 villages. So 1,000 ka baseline kiya gaya, kids who were in class 3, 4 and 5. On math, actually, we did it at that time. And then for a month, we sent SMS to about 600 of the villages. 300 were kept as control. And to 300, we did the SMS and the phone. And the results were not unexpected that the phone plus the message had an effect. But even that SMS, if you take SMS of 162 characters, multiply that by 30 days, it's not a lot of characters, had an improvement. And I think the improvement did not come from the content. I think the improvement came from the engagement that the families or the siblings or whoever it is did with the kids. So I think in all of this, what we learned is technology can be a huge enabler, but it's the technology plus people and plus engagement that's the real secret sauce here. Now, like everybody else, at least like for people like us who are largely field-based, working with children or youth, on a daily basis, in the last 2-3 years, you get use my app, use my platform, use my this, use my that. And at some level, one day I felt like nobody has ever asked me, what do you want? Everybody seems to think they know what I want. And we as Pratham, have not had the confidence to say, this is what we want. Do you have what I want? And it took us 3 years. In the meanwhile, there was chatbots. So obviously, in our large team, people said, ki chatbot laga lo. You're working with women, rural mothers. Unko to gyan ki zarurat hogi. They didn't say it like that, but the intent was ki chatbot will answer all your questions. So we put our chatbot in our early childhood program. कोई सवाल ही नहीं पूछ रहा है chatbot को. Chatbots are, I don't know how you measure chatbots, but there's very little activity. Why? Number one, the women did not have questions that they wanted to ask the chatbot. So if we wanted the chatbot to be used, we had to have like 3-4 weeks of practice of asking questions. But then the chatbot only understands some kinds of languages. So if I speak in Khadi Boli to the chatbot, at least our not so sophisticated chatbot didn't have an answer to that. So the chatbot existed, but to make that really a viable part of where it would add a lot of value, there was so much work that you had to do that actually that work paid off. At some level, I didn't need the chatbot because now my women were doing many things that they were not doing before. So how can technology, which is very powerful and which is out there, I have board members and donors saying, Pratham is a dinosaur. There's no AI in Pratham. True. We are getting left behind. Dunya AI pe chal rahi hai, aage chal rahi hai. We are getting left behind because... So at some point we decided that we have a program that we call Teaching at the Right Level, which is very well recognized and tested and evaluated, which really helps children age 8 and above accelerate their basic learning. So as a team, we sat down, broke down that entire process and said assessment, grouping, pedagogy, whatever. Today we do this. We would like to do tomorrow ABCD. And then anybody who came to us for AI, we said, can you help? So most people ran away because they didn't want to do your AI. They wanted to do their AI, whatever that was. But I think that has put us on a path where really we have now worked to say that we are already doing this. How can bringing in whatever kind of technology help us to do this better, less time, deeper, reach more people? And we are in the middle of this. But I think it was initiated finally when we had the confidence to say, we want this, rather than I'll take what you're giving me. And it took us, a good 3 years after COVID to have the confidence to be able to say that, even though we work with children and we know that technology can help. So I guess in conclusion, I have nothing really in conclusion, but just to pull these things together. One is that institutional arrangements matter. The higher up you go in our education system today, the more constrained I feel opportunities are for trying out new things in new ways. A lot of and I don't know anything above class 8, so I can't say what's happening in the high school or college space, but even from class 6 to 8, the pressure of what is going to happen to you in 10th is very high. So whether it's schools or whether it's families, they are willing to invest in better exam-taking possibilities rather than this non-linear exploration of the world. So middle school onwards, I feel we need a real rethinking, because there are skills that we need, and I don't like them to be called life skills or 21st century skills. I think these are skills to be yourself in your own environment, which we've always needed. And probably in the Stone Age, people did it better than we are doing now. Curriculums, if I look at a curriculum, middle school curriculum today versus 20 years ago, it's not very different. So what is curriculum? Curriculum is some systematic way of packaging whatever it is that you think kids should know or have skills for. We are looking at a lot in the higher education, and maybe things are changing there. But if these foundations, we've got a big push in India now to build the basic foundational literacy and numeracy. Nipun Bharat, I think, is making good traction. But once children are Nipun, then kya hone wala hai? Are they going to go back to learning algebra in the old way? And are you going to use log tables? I mean, what are you going to do? I think we are not doing thinking from middle school onwards as a country. And I think globally also there's not enough thinking on how do you really create a whole different. And so if it is a question of articulation, how do we as a whole very large community of teachers, instructors, and families, and sometimes families are more conservative than schools. Families want their children to have that opportunity, whether it's a government job or whatever it is, that the parents perhaps didn't have. So I think there is a big education of families also that's needed to say that at some point you're going to have to break out of the structures we are in. But how can it be done productively so that it energizes people and doesn't feel like you are suddenly being forced to make a change when you don't know how to? Right now, for example, in the national education policy, age 3 to 6 has become part of the mandate of the education system. Traditionally, age 3 to 6 has been in Anganwadis. And, people always say Anganwadis, they don't have enough resources. Anganwadis have many things to do. They have to do health, they have to do nutrition, they have to do immunization. And early childhood education often is the lowest priority there. But because now it is part of our new education policy, state after state is making Anganwadis move into the school. Now, on the one hand, a continuum. All private schools have LKG and UKG in them. Many parents who have resources prefer to send their children to private school because it's a continuum. But if you look at Anganwadis, and we work very closely with Anganwadis, one of the advantages of Anganwadi being in the community close to the child's home is that the mothers and the fathers, particularly the mothers, and the Anganwadi workers are often speaking the same language and come from the same kind of background. So the connect of each other in your community is much stronger because you're from the same fabric, so to speak. And that is the first step out of home, and that is probably necessary before you come into a more formal structure of school. But by co-locating Anganwadis, and I'm painting everything with a broad brush because even that can be done better, you're kind of moving from mother's lap into a formal system in a way that is not taking advantage of particularly the language strengths that you can have if you stay in an institutional arrangement in the community. And I think in the next couple of years, where and what we do with our 3 to 6 year olds is going to be key, because that is where those foundations start being built and how we take from that. So even if you feel your language people working on something else, I would say take a look at Anganwadis in your surroundings and see what is the language. Anganwadi schools are being flooded with devices. They're being flooded with data collection. Everybody has a dashboard. The minute I hear within a government system, if I say ki iske bare mein aapko kya pata hai, what data do you have on that, people say look at the dashboard. 100% if there's a dashboard, nobody is looking at it. Because somehow some automatic magic genie is looking at the dashboard. And there's this painful data collection of all kinds of things that maybe you don't need so much data for, that's going in. So at some times I worry about the over-digitization of our basic structures too early before that meaningfully that connection can happen. And so, this is not to say you're anti-technology, but you have to be meaningfully connected to what can make a difference. Many examples, I think, I'm sure I've already talked about Story Weaver and Pratham books. I think that's a very good example of how, an open source platform, we have something called Pratham Open School. I think there are many such open sources. There is a group called Bachpan Manao. I don't know if you've heard of them. It's located, I think the Ek Step Foundation people are conducting it. And I recently attended a very nice webinar they had on lullabies. And they're doing something about, they brought lullabies as the theme. They had a researcher speak. They had some actual lullabies being sung. And I think everyone, even if you didn't know the language, enjoyed the part of being of, what does it mean to be a lullaby. I think they're coming up with a lullaby collection where they are going to source it or something. So there are a lot of, I think, projects like this which are going on across the board. So I want to just finish with one more last story. There's no time. I have no idea how much. Ho gaya na time? 5 minutes, okay. And I will leave it with you to say, how would you help in this situation? So my hometown is Patna, as I said. And this is a story from some years ago where there were still a lot of out-of-school children in this primary school age group. And there was a bridge class, as they used to be called, right next to the Ganga. And there was about 20 kids there, and I was with them. So firstly, I don't know how the conversation started, but I just asked them, and I don't know why I asked them this question. I said, Ganga ji kahan se aati hai? Where does Ganga come from? Without one moment's hesitation, the kid said, Ganga ji samundar se aati hai. Ganga ji comes from the ocean. I was really taken aback. So I said, why? They said, Ganga ji mein bahut pani hai, samundar mein bhi bahut pani hai. Lots of water in the Ganga ji, lots of water in the ocean. Next half an hour, I tried to convince them that Ganga ji doesn't come from the ocean. They were really not convinced. They were kind of, Finally, here is how we negotiated a conclusion, because you have to conclude this debate. So one kid said, chalo, मान लेते हैं कि गंगा जी शिव जी की जटा से आती है. Let us just accept that Ganga ji comes from Shivji's hair. What else to do? You have to seek Bhagwan's help sometimes to get out of situations like this. And it was clearly a samjhauta so that I would not have loss of face. Because the kids were very certain that Ganga ji samundar se aati hai. So I was very worried about this. I came back. I don't know. I asked, within my team, I asked friends, should we show them pictures? Should we show them movies? I don't know what to do, because how do I convince children that Ganga ji samundar se nahi aati hai? In addition, they were very sad to hear that I came from a place where there was no Ganga ji. They said, "Aap kahan se aaye ho?" So I said, "Main Delhi se aayi hu." Hai na Delhi mein Ganga ji? I said, "Nahi hai." They were like, "What? What kind of world do you live in where there is no Ganga ji there? Universe has to have Ganga ji in it." How to convince kids like this that Ganga ji kahan se aati hain, and दुनिया में ऐसे भी जगह है जहाँ पे गंगा जी नहीं है. So I didn't have a solution to this, but I happened to be in Allahabad one day. And again, there were some kids near the Ganga. So बड़े डर के, I asked the kids in a much softer voice, Ganga ji kahan se aati hai? So some kids gave me the right answer, because our kids also know how to give right answers. But one kid didn't say anything. So after the class was over, I asked that child, कि बताओ यार तुम क्या सोच रहे हो? What are you thinking? Where does Ganga ji come from? He looked at me like my question was wrong. And he said, Ganga ji कहीं से आती भी नहीं है, कहीं जाती भी नहीं, वो यहीं होती है. Ganga ji doesn't come from anywhere, she doesn't go here, she's always here. So the question I leave for you is that how should I convince these children what happens with Ganga ji? So thank you very much. We can talk to each other. Questions don't have to be only. How much more? Yeah, please. feel they have to ask questions.
I'm just going to take a cue from what Rukmini said. You don't have to feel that it's necessary to ask questions, but if you do, then probably the next.
Each other. Doesn't have to be to me.
Not the Ganga question that's been asked. But before we do that, I just wanted to very quickly, both in the interest of time and also as respect, because a lot of you have to take flights and I don't want to make you feel that you were here for 3 days but missed out on the last bit, right? So I'm going to be keeping this very brief. I think Rukmini was a little skeptical as to, and you mentioned it yourself, as to why am I here. I have many reasons why she should be here and why we brought her here. But the most important of all of that was we all seem to think that now Pratham is an example because it's been doing all of these things. I wanted to put Rukmini here quite literally under the spotlight to say this was not the case 25 years ago. When Pratham started as an idea. And that's the idea that a lot of you at this point have. So just to prove that Pratham is today where it is because somebody decided to do it, and you all are sitting on ideas or working on ideas, and maybe this is that connection. Having said that, I only have 2 things. I'm sure there were many takeaways, including Gangaji kahan se aati hai. But the 2 takeaways that I have, and I want to pass it on to you, and maybe Rukmini agrees with me or not, is that trust and simplicity. You trust your community, you work with educators, you work with children, you work with government. I think a basic, undeniable element of trust is what is going to make sure that your work is taking to the next level. The second point is keep it simple. The technology can be complicated. It could be a lot of code, a lot of documentation, but not the way that you express it, not the way that you work with it. That can be still simple, right? So I think trust and keeping it simple is what I take away from the keynote. And I invite you, all of you, to talk to Rukmini when we break from this and have a better conversation than what will be allowed here under the light, under the artificial constraints of time. She's with here for a little more time. I would now want to get Sneha. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sir, thank you. Thank you very much. Again, I think I should have a conversation with your sister and say you did a fantastic job, if that's acceptable. But thank you again. Sneha, all yours for reflections. And then we also have some feedback and some reflections from the participants. And then we'll do the closing remarks. We have the director of IIIT Hyderabad here, Professor Shukla. We would request you to also come in after the participants speak. And then we'll say thank you to all of you.
Thanks, Sanveer. And thanks, Rukmini, for that really insightful keynote. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes just to share some reflections, some thoughts on, I think, what has been a very, very exciting, interesting, and for me personally, very enriching 3 days. Lots of different conversations, some difficult, some very new, I think, for many of us. So I think just to very briefly sum it up and to also think about how to take this forward. What are some questions that came up that maybe didn't get discussed enough? What did we really try to unpack? I think a large sort of running theme through these 3 days was definitely the sort of political economy of Indian languages, right? So whether it is looking at policy, looking at a key thing was around teaching and learning. How do we incentivize teaching and learning in Indian languages, but also its use as livelihood? How did we look at the market and the industry? How does that shape the way in which Indian languages have grown? So whether it is your publishing industry, whether it is news media, whether it is social media, right? How have Indian languages grown, thrived? What has been left behind? Another big theme, of course, was the labor around languages, the labor of language documentation, preservation, revitalization. So whether it is translation, whether it is annotation, whether it is digitization, or whether it is just simply trying to bring together resources, identifying, bringing together resources in your languages. Who is doing it? What are the resources? How can we continue to foster this, right? Data, I think, has been one of the sort of underlying themes of many of our discussions, not only through the sort of discussions on technology, but also, I think, community and people. But how are we looking at data, right? Who is creating that data? we started on day one by looking at crowdsourced data, looking at how communities can help build and put together language data sets, right, with the workshop. Then we also looked at, of course, through the next two workshops, how do we look at translation, how do we look at evaluation today. I think we are ultimately trying to make our experience of technology more human, and language being, I think, the space to mediate that. Language in mediating this experience of technology as an embodied experience, that's something that we've tried to engage with through these 3 days. Finally, of course, coming from the area of work that we've been doing, which is with open knowledge projects, with Wikimedia, there has been so much conversation now about the commons being in a crisis. And this is, the resurgence of AI is just maybe one of the reasons why this notion of a crisis has come up, right? The space for open knowledge, the space for, open resources, thinking, may also be shrinking in many ways. And what is a robust knowledge commons, right? A robust knowledge commons is necessarily multilingual, and that also makes it inclusive, accessible. So how do we together continue to foster that space? I think that's the question I'd want to leave you with. We could invite brief reflections from a couple of people in the group today. So I'd like to call upon Nida. Nida is here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. My name is Nida Iqbal, and I'm from Rekhta Foundation, and I'm here to share, the wonderful experience, enriching experience that all of us had in the last 3 days here. So, over the last, 3 days at Bahu Bhasa, we have seen something deeply encouraging, a collective understanding that language is not only heritage, it is infrastructure for identity, access, and of course, dignity. We have heard how low-resource languages face challenges in digitization, searchability, of course, education, and representation in the AI ecosystems. And yet the solutions we have explored, here show a path forward. And probably the three main key points that, stood out in the last 2 days were first, of course, about digitization and the archival efforts, where large-scale scanning and preservation projects are making rare literature available for scholars, students, and communities globally. And the second being script and dictionary technology, where tools that allow cross-script reading and morphological search and accessible dictionaries are lowering the barrier to learning and its usage. And the third being language data being used for AI, where collaborative data sets for speech, OCR correction, machine translation, and small domain-focused language models are ensuring that our languages can live in the future and not just in the past. And Bahu Bhasa surely affirms that language work is strongest when it is shared by, people like all of us here. And our way forward definitely is, collaboration across institutions, regions, and disciplines, as we have seen in the last 3 days. So the ideas that we discussed in the last 3 days are, of course, not abstract goals, so to say, but these are practical steps that ensure linguistic inclusion. And coming to Rekhta, and also taking cue from, the last session of Rukmini ji and, of course, Tanveer, where, Rekhta that all of us see today started with a very small idea and almost like a passion project for the founder, where, the core idea was to bring together Urdu poetry to make it, digitally accessible, to democratize, so to say, Urdu literature for, all of us globally. And at Rekhta Foundation, this mission has been central to our work for more than a decade now. And for Urdu, we have built one of the world's largest digital literary archives, developed the most comprehensive trilingual Urdu dictionary and Hindi dictionary now. And we have enabled script learning and cultural access for global audiences, and are now building AI-ready data sets for Urdu and, of course, language technology through Rekhta Labs. You can, read more about the initiatives that we have had at rekhtafoundation.org, our website. To sum up, we truly believe that all of us, Bahu Bhasa, Rekhta Foundation, and all of us present here share the same vision that languages must be cherished as heritage, but they are also, they should be empowered for the future together, and all of us can make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nida. I'd now like to invite Ashwini Lele. She could come up and share a few thoughts.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here for so long. I hope you're still able to listen. Last 3 days have been extremely enriching, very invigorating personally for me. There are so many new things that I'm taking away from this, and I've never heard of Ho language or Wancho language before, and there is a whole grammar book coming out of it. It's my ignorance in spite of my white hair here, but I didn't know that, and this was a new thing that I learned. The multiple ways of communication that we have learned here, the communication through pictures, the immersive way of communication from science gallery, and learning from children just now, the last lecture we heard. And it was all very new, and it was very assuring that, there are so many people who are working to take their own languages to the next generation. Although I know the Marathi that my daughter speaks is hardly Marathi, but I still want to work for Marathi, and I'm sure there are people working for different languages. So it's very assuring. So I'm taking some hope from here. Hope in terms of technology. A lot of things are happening in technology. There is a big debate whether the technology will be all with the Googles and Metas of the world, or whether we are going to have our own technology. What is the gap? How we are going to fill it up? But there certainly things are happening, and certainly we can do something about it. There is a hope with the community. It's not just me or the Marathi people who are working for the languages, but there are so many people who are working for their own languages. That's very, very assuring. I'm also taking this, otherwise working for a language is a very isolating experience. Working on Wiki is very isolating. But here I found my community kind of a feeling. And finally, a confidence that, yes, you can do it. I can do it, we can do it. And for my language, if I'm not going to work, then who is going to work for it? So that is the big takeaway for me. And there are many people like me who are doing their work, doing their bit. So thank you, everyone, and all the best for your future endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashwini. And finally, I'd like to invite Mechek, if you could come up and speak.
Good evening, everyone. I am Mechek Samparawan. I am from Manipur, and presently I work in Arunachal Pradesh. I speak Chiru language. Chiru is a TB Kukichin subgroup under Tibeto-Burman family. So I work in REWATS. REWATS full form is Research Institute of World's Ancient Tradition, Cultures and Heritage. So it is based in Roing, and it is affiliated to ICCS US, and we have ICCS unit in Delhi also, and they are planning to open its unit in Northeast India also. So in rewards also we have many centers, a number of centers, not much. We have a Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage, recently launched, and I'm working in Reward Center for Mother Languages. So what we are doing is documentation of this underdocumented the endangered languages of Arunachal Pradesh right now, and we are also trying to cover the other parts of Northeast India also. So coming here, I was also mentally prepared that the languages that I documented and I work on is not part of this conference. I'm mentally prepared. So the so-called language that you call low source languages here, for us is the most advanced language. So here, I came here representing hundreds of languages from Northeast India. So we have in Northeast India, more than 300 languages are spoken. So I can say without any calculation, approximately more than 95% of these languages are digitally, not documented. They don't have any resource. So there is a need for this documentation of these languages. And speaking about the experience here, it is a very wonderful and amazing experience coming here, because I have attended many conferences about the linguistics conference organized by different universities. So we experience about the core linguistic topics. But today in this conference, we have people, representatives coming from different backgrounds, different states, and having, sharing their experience from different backgrounds. So it is a very enriching and very insightful and very wonderful experience. So the opportunities that I find here is that it is very good for me to interact with some organizations, especially OKI, Open Knowledge Initiative, IIT Hyderabad, Eclavia, and also Pratham, just Madam Rukmini has just presented now. I've known her just after her presentation. I will surely talk to you after the program. So we are doing the similar kind of a work for the promotion of this endangered languages. So it is very enriching. And also today I would like to make a small request. So this kind of program to the OKI, my request is that there should be a Bahu Bhasa for the underdocumented languages also, if possible. So there should be this kind of program for the underdocumented languages also. The languages that is not included here in this conference. So with this, I would like to thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mechek. So now I would like to invite Professor Sandeep Shukla on stage to share the closing address.
So since I am not a linguist, I only speak my mother tongue, maybe Hindi and English to some extent. But I must thank all of you for coming to our institute and enriching the group that is working on linguistics and technology for Indian languages, in many different ways, as I can understand from just the last few conversations that I heard. One thing that my personal experience is that when I lived in the US, a lot of people told me that they used to be jealous of us Indians because we speak so many languages. They can speak only one language, most of them, right? So So we are naturally, having some advantage according to many of them, that our thought processes are a lot more, we are able to process thoughts in a much more complex ways than their own linear ways of thinking. So that's one thing that comes to mind when we hear the richness of Indian diversity of the Indian language landscape. Also, I was looking at the posters downstairs, and I saw, as somebody has mentioned, the Ho language and a few other language names that I saw was unfamiliar to me, and I was thinking that India is only comparable to maybe European Union, but even there the richness is much more limited, right? I mean, they have only probably 15, 20 different languages and maybe equal number of dialects. In my own language, in Bengali, I at least can speak 2-3 dialects because of families from different parts of Bengal. So what I also find is that my language is kind of dying in a sense that when we were growing up, we used to read a lot of Bengali novels, and there was a rich number of such novels being written on almost very, very at a rapid rate. But now I hear, at least the kids who are from Calcutta, they don't read, right? So there is a problem that I hear always. And then when you speak to the children, they don't speak like us. You can actually, you cannot understand their language almost, right? So I think that even for high resource language like Bengali, if there is a concern about its kind of extinction, and what has happened now is that even the most well-known Bengali daily, Anandabajar Patrika, makes lots of mistakes in grammar and in spelling. I read it almost regularly and I see that. And if that means that the language has a problem, because if that particular magazine or newspaper is making so many mistakes, that means that people who are writing for them or proofreading for them or editing for them are not very careful about the language or do not know the language to the extent they should. So I can imagine now that what would happen to languages that are low resource languages, that are not having as many people speaking that language, and that does not have a separate country actually working very hard to preserve the language. So Bangladesh actually is doing a lot more than West Bengal in preserving Bengali language. Although in the recent politics of Bangladesh, things might have changed, but they have done pretty good job in terms of even the first font that was created, digital font that was created, the editing system, Avro editing system, that was also done by a Bangladeshi technology guy. So I think that all of us, India has so many languages that I am specifically worried about Bengali, but I'm pretty sure you are worried about Marathi and other languages, Hindi or other languages. So I think that all of you are going to be making contribution to preservation, to more even I heard about creating resources for AI, training AI systems and so on, so that it can be better preserved and things like that. So in all that, it gives me a positive vibe that this kind of programs are very, very important for preserving the rich heritage of India and the diversity that are inherent in the Indian system. And that's what I can say, thank you for. Other than that, I cannot say much about your core subject because I have no knowledge about it. So I'll thank you all, and have a good trip back if you have come from far, and hope you can come back again for another such program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Shukla. I would now request Professor Vasu to share his closing remarks.
Okay, so I'll not take long. When we started this program, this event, we started with the recognition of the silent crisis that is happening, erosion of thought, erosion of ideas, erosion of looking at the world in our unique ways. While we are celebrating the diversity of these languages, diversity of thought, and diversity of the cultures here. So this is, we kind of put two things together, something to be worried about, something to celebrate. I think that's the dichotomy that we should carry, because this is going to help us to carry forward our efforts, our journey, and so on. One very important thing that I wanted to mention here, each one of you in this room, you are a warrior. You are protecting something that is invaluable. You are working towards keeping this treasure for next generation and generation after and generation later. I think we should not be really forgetting about the importance of what we are doing. And again, as it is demonstrated today, these last 3 weeks, examples like Rekta, examples like Pratham, they tell everything starts with the idea. And then when we are together for long enough, these ideas, like the banyan tree of IIIT Hyderabad, will grow and then give shade for everybody. I think we should never forget that particular fact. Sticking together long enough will create history, will create hope, and will inspire several other people. Our main idea of bringing together this particular program is, again, I mentioned earlier, I'm going to repeat that, but it's very important. One is create a platform where different communities come and share their joy and their pain. And then we suddenly realize that our joy is very same and our pain is also very similar. So that means you and I are able to connect on this platform and realize that together we can actually address the pain points and also at the same time leverage each other's strengths to move forward. That is the first purpose. And then the second thing is enough people, enough voice, enough rationality. All these things are the ingredients to put together a bigger voice that would change the government's opinion and then the way things are done in policy. Please don't undermine the importance of such gatherings. The end of actually our work starts now. After understanding each other's voices, each other's pain points, we are going to put together something that is going to kind of represent all of us in whatever the platform where it should be represented in order to kind of give us a better tomorrow. Then the other thing we're talking about is technology. You all have realized the power of technology in the last 3 days. But then please also understand technology is only incidental. Again, Rukmini ji mentioned it so beautifully. There's a technology plus people. That's the differentiating factor. And then let's work towards it relentlessly. And then I would like to promise on behalf of IIIT Hyderabad, on behalf of Open Knowledge Initiative, and on behalf of Language Technologies Research, that we are going to continue to provide this platform enriched, supported by technology, which will make your voice as a main voice a louder voice, right? That is our promise to you. and then look forward to working with all of you. And this is the beginning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Vasu. I'll now hand over to Subodhji for a final vote of thanks.
So actually, Vasu sir made my job a little simple, because he indicated some of the next steps which we are going to take after this. So I think we can actually make some recommendations on policy and technology, as you said, as a collective, language collective. Then we are also visualizing some working groups around specific topics such as the research and some programmatic activities as well. And we are also thinking of one innovative concept like digital consortium of Indic languages, or some dashboard in which we are going to collect all the languages and their information, like the poster session we have in the ground floor. So we'll be collecting all the information about the languages, their pains and joyful experiments as well. So I think those are some of the outputs we have devised, but we will keep in touch, I think, with all of you. We will share, of course, all the contact details, email IDs basically, and websites also of each of the participants with you. Actually, I am grateful to basically LTRC team, Deepthi Madam, Arafat, Radhika Madam, Vandan, for their support in the workshops. I'm also thankful to the whole food and other things arranged by the IIIT staff and the accounts team as well. I also thank my other team members actually who were behind the curtains, like they were not on stage at any point of time. Medini Madam, you all know her because of the bookings and the support she gave. Then Ankit, who was documenting all your voices. So I think they will be soon on website or YouTube or Insta as well. He is very creative. Then I'm also thankful to Kashyap. Kashyap, where is he? Kashyap. So I think Kashyap. Yeah, Kashyap. I think he was like, he supported in all the activities here, because we are also new in this institution, but Kashyap supported us. Nivas, who look after all the technical, the presentations and the actual programmatic activities as well. Nitesh for her support in the demo session as well as the community building amongst us. So I'm thankful to all. Yeah, Mr. Nagaraj, is he there? Yeah, he is also behind the scene. So I'm also thankful to the documentation people here, the cameraman and other people who documented all the things we are putting up on the YouTube, all the sessions soon, edited, and we will be putting up soon. So you will be having the rich repository which you can refer afterwards as well. So again, thank you all. So looking forward to the Bahu Bhasa iterations for, as he said, they are very necessary. Many people have mentioned that arranging the Bahu Bhasa iterations for language families or region-wise will be more productive and meaningful. So we will definitely discuss on that. We will take it forward. Thank you. Thank you all.
Excuse me. So we put up this form. If you are interested in a lot of things that